Hello, welcome to another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. My name is Kris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org. Today is December 17th, another Wednesday, another 9 p.m., 2025. And this is Great Work Launchpad, episode 34, Shadow Work Part 32, Fear or Love 16, Why to Begin, Part 2. And that's what we're going to talk about eventually. So the purpose of the Great Work Launchpad, I'll just mention, the image that I have up is trying to get something about inspiring others to get involved in a monumental effort, some great work. They're building something wonderful. At the end of the sun, light, truth. At the end of the rainbow, there's no rainbow, but there's lots of rainbowy colors. And so at the end of it all, there's the light. So I guess that's the direction they're going to, symbolizes. So that's what they're building. They're building a very big thing. It's not a physical thing, as we know in our work, in the great work. It's not something physical. But I'll say hi to Brandon. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
All right, hanging in there. It was a hectic day, and still didn't really want to do this, but anyways, here I am, week after week.
I understand. Yep.
Week after week with minimal views and still going at it, and because that's what we gotta do.
Yep.
If not me, then who? That's what we always gotta tell ourselves, that if not you, then who? If you're not willing to do it, how can you expect other people to do it? Yeah, 13-hour days. From 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, it's like busy. Taking care of the work, taking care of others. So, yeah.
Yep.
Anyways. So the image is where we're doing the work. We're building something with a good goal in the end. Light, truth, knowledge, a good sunny day, warmth, life, all that symbolism. And that's what's at the end there. And normally, the Great Work Launchpad, it's about getting people ignited so that they are an embodiment of truth, love, and freedom, and they do the great work and they launch themselves up. So we're trying to inspire people, get people into doing the shadow work, the inner work, first half of the eventually getting to the outer work, and the inner work is ongoing anyways, and we keep going at it. So people who are shy need an avenue to try to get their voices, practice things, get out there, try to do things off the cuff and respond to topics, familiarize yourself with the process of live discussions, or you want help with homework, I can get you started on figuring out how to do things in a more slower pace way, which would be with text and writing things, which isn't as demanding as doing something live and having to respond with knowledge on the spot. And and one thing I had started last week was where is this thing? This one. Yeah, I'll just do a little opener for there's How to Be the True Media. That's coming up January 5th, starting. I think it's enrollment closes January 1st at midnight. So that's up to midnight on December 31st. You need the skills. You need to learn how to do it. Well, this is one way to do it. You could do it on your own. A lot of us have done it that way. Otherwise, well, join this, and you can have someone with a lot of experience and a lot of work under their belt guide you along the way from A to Z and getting you started. And it has helped a lot of people who eventually did get started, I think. A lot of people don't, but some do. Another thing is, Freedom Under Natural Law. That's coming up in February 2026. So check out freedomundernaturalllaw.com. We're going to be talking about, surely there'll be people talking about things related to natural law and shadow work and things like that, as there usually are. And Brendan Spencer is going to be taking part of that, so he'll be doing a presentation there. So I guess that's my intro for that. And we'll do a little recap for last week, which was we're talking about why you should begin. Why should you even get started? What's the point of this? And I had, the nice journey went into this, the path. You start at the path. It's the beginning of the journey. Looks easy to start. You're going downhill. It's not a steep downhill. It's like nice and smooth. And then it wanders off into like off the mountains into the valleys of the unknown, and you don't know what's there. And you're going to be swimming. There's water. You're going to have to craft a boat, make a boat, get in, get some rapids, I don't know, and make your way to eventually that end goal, that nice, heavenly, paradisical quote, colloquial definition of utopia, not the real definition of utopia. Of nowhere means nowhere, but the ideal place that we want to get to. Well, that's at the end, and we're trying to get there, and that's what the great work is about. It's about getting there. I talked about love as not a feeling, but what's inside of you in terms of a compassion and a greater identification and valuation that motivates you towards that greater work, towards actualizing that journey, which is the requirement is the great work. And then to fulfill the great work, well, there's the requirement of being able to create the content, and then the things you need to learn to do that. You need to learn knowledge. You need to work on yourself. You need to do the shadow work, hence this whole series as part of the Great Work Launchpad. And all the skills and everything we talked about of the previous part and the fears. Well, there's how to be the true media, how to become the true media, can help you overcome and learn these skills that you might be lacking. And so we're comparing the reasons why people say they can't, or they fear, or they give excuses for why they're not doing it, as we went through the previous, well, excluding the last one, the 4 before that, so starting 5 episodes ago. Looking at them side by side and realizing how much more powerful these recognitions of truth, not these excuses for not doing it, for bullshitting yourself, but these recognitions of truth, a true reasoning in truth, not a reason to not start as an excuse, or rationalizing why you can't begin, and not doing anything to overcome those current limitations that you're setting for yourself, whether they're real or not. And I went into the great work is a requirement for true freedom, and our world needs more voices to speak the truth. And when you engage in doing the public work, you will help awaken others, and in doing so, you contribute to the effort of ending human slavery on Earth. So it's a contribution. I went into that. It's a potential. Now you're going to start. Potentially, you might have viewers. Potentially, you won't have viewers, and you have to build up and try to do networking, which I hate and I'm so horrible at. So it's a potential that you can contribute to. Because if you don't do it and no one does it, then there's no potential to contribute to that goal that we're trying to work towards, that nice thing that we're trying to build and this effort that we're trying to build towards. It's not going to happen if no one contributes to trying to make it happen. And the more people who help in the effort, like, where is it? No, this one, yeah. It's like there's a lot of people there. Hey, they're all getting involved. There's like a lot of work. They got the tools, they got the supplies, they got the material. It's getting done. There's tons of people involved. They're inspired, they're cheerful. Well, this might not be cheerful work, so it might not be adequate to compare it that way, but they're like, yeah, let's fucking do this. Let's go. They got the energy. So they're going to get it done. But we're nowhere near those numbers. Like that's, thousands of people or whatever trying to get to that goal. And yeah, we're not there. We're not even close to that. So we got a few of us, go pathetic. For it. Yeah, it's pathetic. So there's a few of us like, all right, let's go. And we're like 100 people and we're trying to build a skyscraper or something. I don't know if that's a good analogy. We're trying to build a new city. It's going to take a long time with 100 people. So yeah, it's this big effort, this monumental effort. And the less people that are involved, the less likely it is to happen, because it's not just that, if you have 100 people on something, give them 50 years and they'll get that thing accomplished. And then the next 100 people can continue building on top of it and then eventually get it done in 50 more years or something. Well, this isn't how this works. This is an aggregate process, a culmination that requires an aggregate input, an aggregate effort, an aggregate work in order to realize the end goal. So there's not really, I guess, any analogy that truly compares because of this aggregate aspect. Something I've used was colors, paint in a bucket. If you're trying to make a blue bucket of paint, this big pool, and you take a red bucket of paint and you dump it in, and the only thing in the pool is a red bucket of paint. You add 1 drop of blue paint every day. Eventually you'll get to the same quantity as the red bucket, and then you'll get purple. And if you want to overcome the red, well, you got to add a lot more blue, like hundreds of buckets, and then you'll like pretty much dilute the red. It won't be purple anymore, and it'll be pretty much blue. So that's like where the aggregate is overcoming that. The red would be the immoral, the moral would be the blue. That's how I symbolize it in color symbolism. And so we need a hell of a lot of blue buckets and not the inverse, which is what we have now, which is a lot of red buckets of paint. We have a shitload of red paint. We need more blue paint. And just adding a drop at a time. On top of that, when you add a blue drop, well, there's more people coming into existence who are adding more red drops. So it doesn't even add up over time because there's more red drops continually being added. Anyways, that's as close as an accurate analogy I can come up to, and to emphasize this quantity, this majority aspect of this importance of more people being involved to influence other people to then do the work on themselves and then engage in the work that can influence others. And that's and I was ending with there's no higher purpose. Last week I ended with there's no higher purpose than restoring or preserving freedom and ending human slavery and keeping it that way, because that's all of our inherent purpose, because it's our natural right is to have our natural rights. They're inherent. They're from our birth. It's our birthright. That's the term I was using. It's our birthright that we have our natural rights. They come with us when we are born, and they are suppressed. They are denied by the system of control, the system of enslavement that we live within, which is taking away freedom. And so we need to restore it. And then once we restore it, we need to preserve it. And that takes intellectual self-defense and physical self-defense to preserve it, to fight back those who would make false claims of ownership, and to not allow evil to gain a foothold and continuing to grow. So that's the restoring it. Once it's taken away, people make a false claim of ownership. We got to restore it. And we got to push back against it, not as I was explaining and I talked about in my karma presentation, where the karma, the negative is put at the feet of people receiving it, and then it just stays there and it just keeps going one way. We gotta send it back so that the karma goes back on the individuals who do it to get them to stop. And that's the incentive. Otherwise, there is no reason they would stop if they can just keep getting away with it. They'll just keep doing it and doing and doing it, and that's the world we have, because we don't have the quantity of people in this principle of quantity or majority that can restore and then preserve freedom. But we could get there. It's just that we're not there yet, and there's a lot of work ahead of us to do that. So I ended somewhere around there. Brendan, if you wanted to say anything about that before we continue.
Sure. When you first showed your slide, the first one, with everyone coming together.
Oh, wait a second. When I switch that, hold on. Oh, yeah, you're not there. Hold on. I'll bring it into here. Keep talking. When I switch the scene, you're not there. That's why. Okay, all good.
No, I was thinking about what Karl Marx said about, workers of the world, how unite, but from a different, context, from a natural law, how context, because that's what we are trying to do is the great workers of humanity are trying to get the individual to unite under truth and morality, not unite under, control. We're trying to unite under truth and morality and trying to influence by way of leading by example to try to get others to see this and to possibly change their life by doing the work upon themselves. So the great workers are trying to unite within ourselves and trying to spread this unification by way of more education to get others to go through that same unification process so then they can get back into that education process. So we are trying to get the individual to unite under truth and morality, not under control, collectivism, slavery, and trying to homogenize, like everyone into like one identity. That's not what we're trying to do. We are trying to celebrate the individual by getting the individual to change themselves by starting with changing the way they think and their worldviews. Um, and that's really what we are answering, because there is a call, there is a voice, there is a message that's being, you know, put out, broadcast to humanity. And sadly, not enough, individuals are resonating to that call. And you brought up Funnel Five, and of course, it's always a pleasure to be able to present at any online conference. But the first funnel that I was in was Funnel Two, and this kind of gets into like this whole topic of the great work, Launchpad, love over fear. But when I did my first presentation at Funnel Two, and that was like the first um my online thing that I ever did. And right before my presentation, I had, like joined the chat room and there was 1,000 people watching. And I'm just like, wow, like, wow, 1,000 people watching. And I'm about to be on like 10, 15 minutes. And I'm just watching and I just get like nervous, and I don't really get, like nervous. And I had to like turn the stuff off, had to go outside to kind of like calm down. But like afterwards, her Funnel 3 came around, still like the same people. Then Funnel 4. And then it's been like 3 years. And I'm like, man, if there was 1,000 people, like watching Funnel, these are people, who were tuned into, her natural law, morality, shadow work. Why is it that majority of those people haven't started the great work? Why is it that majority of those watchers, it's been over 3 years now, I want to say, why have they not, gotten on the battlefield? Why are they still in fear? Why are they still in cowardice? Why are they, just still back, sitting back and not getting active? So where are all of those content creators? Like where are all of those, health teachers? Because it was 1,000 people, who was watching. And even when Funnel 3 and Funnel 4 come on, it was, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was decent amount of, people. So it's like, where are all of those, individuals when it comes to actual taking that next step into the initiation and in the education process? Where are all of these teachers? And you brought up, like the reason for you to not want to get into this work. Is it really true reason? Because I don't think it is.
Well, that's why it's an
Because it's
excuse. Yeah.
correct. Yeah, 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 yeah.
You're reasoning about why, oh, I
You're
can't do this and this is my
right.
excuse. It's not like a reason based in truth. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, yes. It's a false reasoning in your mind, to try to, you know, make sense of whatever bullshit, but it's not real a reason that's not going to stand up to, true logic and, like fucking non-contradiction at the end of, like for the day. And I think that's really, about it as far as, like how the first part. I still have to go back and watch her last week's show to tune in, but how it's crazy because when you have been putting on this series, it's been a lot of other things that have been going on. You had Patio's, Shadow Work Seminar a few weeks ago, and then you got Funnel 5 coming up. Talking about igniting. So get that fire starting, getting that drive going, getting that energy flowing to try to inspire, her new teachers to try to inspire, new content creators to try to inspire, you know, more individuals to want to, dive into this kind of work. So yeah, a lot of synchronicities, have been going on like over the past couple of weeks as far as, talking about this fear and love, how dynamic that humanity seems to, want to stay struggling into, that whole fear, her modality. So
Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Good afternoon, gents. How's it going? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, cool. I thought I'd just jump on because I had a conversation today with someone who would be a great candidate for doing the great work. And I've got a couple of responses and I wanted to pass it along to you guys and see what you guys thought, if that's okay.
Sure.
Just to, so, I was, asking him to come on and to talk about some things. He said, I'm a bit shy, trying to stay under the radar so I don't get pushback on my projects. And then I pushed back and said about, what's going on at the moment. And he said, don't worry. I've been dropping hints hardcore on X, Instagram, and Facebook for years. If people can't hear the hints and explicit warnings, then it may not be their time. I warned about the Sydney attack a year and 2 months ago. And the pushback again, they about, moral obligation and this kind of thing. And he said, yeah, too many sleepwalkers. Some don't have the psychological fortitude. So it's reasonable for them to stick their head in the sand from that perspective. We all have our limits. Some are higher than others. Mine is high, but I've bumped into it and it was scary. And he said, but I feel I'm here to bridge, help see the new reality. At least I'll try. So I wanted to bring that in as a kind of typical response from someone who may not be familiar specifically with natural law and the great work and what their first reaction is when being pressed about doing the great work and getting out there.
So this person, since they're not familiar with the work, I would think that the things they're talking about are to talk about the effects, all the symptoms, all the problems, is what they're thinking about, that they don't want to talk about these things. Right? They're talking about speaking out against what the government's doing or this is happening, all these symptoms and all the effects, and they don't want to risk their projects. So what are these projects? You think that just because you put your voice online, the government's going to know and then they're going to come and take you and put you in jail or what? Like, I don't know. That's not really how it happens. You don't matter that much. You're not gonna dismantle their whole operation just because you're gonna speak out. So that's more of that's like totally fear based. That's really lying to themselves. That's one of the BS. The bullshitting themselves. These fears and this whole they drop hints. What is it? Dropping a hint? What the hell does that even mean? And then it's like, oh, they drop hints. If people don't get it, it's not their time. Well, that's more, that's like into the new age bullshit. I'd say that it's not their time. Everyone's on their journey, so it's not their time. Their soul isn't ready, or I don't know. There's all this bullshit, these beliefs. So this is another belief that someone can have. Like, does it mean they're ready? No, probably not. Are they ever going to be ready? Maybe not. But it's not a reason to not. Anyways, they're talking about the symptoms, which I'm not too much in favor of just always talking about the symptoms and the effects, because I call them the flavor of the week, the flavor of the day. There's just nonstop. It's always going to be there. We need to talk about the causes, because that's where the solution is. And if they talked about that, that's even less confrontational against, I guess, against the government in a sense, or against whoever they're afraid of, because you're not even specifically talking about the specific behavior that anyone in the position of authority is engaging in. You're talking about higher abstract knowledge that applies to like everything, but you're not targeting things individually where someone can be like directly offended. They have to like understand how the effects relate to the causes, and then they could get offended. But when you're talking about these eternal truths, you're not going to necessarily risk your projects and people that it's not their time. Yes, they're not intellectual, or you mentioned that they're like, these people aren't smart enough or something. They're not intellectual enough and they don't get it. And yeah, and that's part of the problem we've talked about here, is people don't know how to think, and they're not taught how to think. In the beginning of Pascal's shows, since in the first few, he really emphasized this. The whole reason the world is as it is, that we have these problems, is because people don't know how to discern truth from falsity. And he gives that Soren Kierkegaard quote that there's two ways to be fooled. One is to believe things that are not true, and one is to reject things that are true. So those two ways keep people fooled because they don't know how to think. So they're accepting falsity as truth, and they're rejecting truth as being false, even though it's true. And because they don't know how to think, they don't know how to discern, they don't know how to, they don't have a truth discernment methodology and how something actually qualifies as truth. And they're probably not even interested in looking into it. Most of the people aren't really interested in it. And this goes back to what Brandon was saying, that people watch. You could have funnel, you could have seed, you could have Passio, and anyone else getting into more of these causal, deeper aspects. And people watch and don't get involved. And it's a watch party to them. It's entertainment is what it is. It's infotainment is what it comes down to. And they're interested in adding themselves as a viewer to like the view count and liking and sharing or something. And they're interested in taking in the information, but they're not at the point where they care enough to put it out. And that's the whole problem, is people don't care enough. And that was why in Funnel 4, my presentation was truly caring about being enslaved. That was the whole point of my presentation. And I took the subheading of that funnel, which was, I think, inspiring care to action. I took the subheading, the main heading of the conference was humanity rising. And I'd like totally forgot about that the whole time. And I made, when I wrote like Funnel 4, I put inspiring care to action, because it wasn't even about humanity rising. For me, it was all about inspiring care to act. And that's why I was truly caring about being enslaved. And that's what people don't have yet, because they don't care enough. They might care to a certain level, care about what's going on, to like know about it and learn about it, maybe care to figure out the solution, but they're not caring enough to enact the solution. which is these requirements to do the great work, which is to teach these eternal principles, get that causal knowledge into people so that they can be part of that snowball process of effectuating change towards that goal that we're all trying to work towards. Yeah, so that's what I had to say about that. Brandon, you wanted to add anything?
Yes, you mentioned the part about what dropping knowledge on Facebook. Am I
I think you
correct?
said Twitter, right? Twitter?
Oh,
All three is like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
yeah. That's not the best place to try to inform people. I don't know why people still think they're going to share knowledge through text and share deeper, messages through chat messaging sites. Um, and the context gets lost. It's just, a few words. There's not much clarity, there's not much elaboration, there's not much facts and actual knowledge that's being sent. And again, most importantly is the context, gets lost. Like we've all been in conversations, like through text messaging or like these social media apps, and then you're talking with someone and then the context just gets like misrepresented or completely lost in the conversation because like through these texting apps you don't get to see people's facial expressions. You don't like get to sense the vibe. You don't really get to sense the context. It's just the words that come on the screen, and that's not like the best way when it comes to sending or spreading this knowledge, spreading this information, and that's not a part of the great work. Because that one message that you are sending off is being bombarded by a whole bunch of ads, subliminal messages, and a whole bunch of other bullshit that's on those platforms. So if a platform is tailored toward bullshit, you're not really going to spread a lot of good knowledge because even that good knowledge is going to be, you know, it's going to have to be filtered out through all the bullshit. And like, who's really going to want to do all, like, he'll go through all that. And then too,
And it's not searchable. It's not findable. It has no
right,
findability.
correct.
It just goes
And
into
then,
the void.
yeah, yep. And think about all of the messages that are on those platforms. And then too, you're not really creating anything. That's what people forget when it comes to doing this work is you're actually creating something. You're actually putting something online that can be archived, so like even when you're gone, this information could still be, learned and used as a means of education. So that right there is the most important is what are you actually creating? Because you're actually having to tap into a creative outlet and actually have to sit down and think about, hey, what I want to create, like how am I going to create it, like you have to formulate this stuff. Anyone could just go on Twitter or X and just send off a tweet or a message that takes like 2 seconds, but when it actually comes to creating, you're actually putting time and sacrifice and you're putting your care and heart into it, because no one just wants to waste time. So if you are going to create something, you're going to want to put your time into that craft and get better at it. You would think, but when it comes to just doing stuff on Facebook, it's like the bottom of the barrel. That's like the lowest of the low, because anyone
Yeah.
can do that. Like it's no effort.
I do
It's
know
no
this
formation.
person collects information and breaks things down and sends people like little packages of things to look into and all of that. But the point that you're raising there is good in regards to the scale and being an archivable and searchable, and then also in video form as well. I did want to bring up a few points, if that's okay, kind of related to this subject, because I do think that while it's incorrect, I do think that so moving on from this person, the last point I'll say is that there are a lot of people that go down that kind of setting up community out on the land kind of, and really strongly believe that in unto itself is creating the solution. But then that taps into the other things that you guys have kind of eloquently gone through over these series of my freedom and being in a bubble and all of those kind of subjects. But a couple of the subjects I wanted to kind of get a few thoughts on, and I know that it's incorrect, but I wanted to respond if that's okay, One is that I find that kind of more entrepreneurial or business or smart in some way kind of people that are kind of successful, they fall into this trap of being in fear of the blowback, or like what that person was saying, like if I'm if I'm putting myself out there, then it's going to affect my business and my projects and my operations and all of that kind of thing, and money and all of this kind of stuff. That's obviously a big part of it. And then the other thing is also another fear-based reaction is in regard, and it might not be, it's pretty strong in Australia, so maybe it's more specific to here, but there's this kind of like almost like a labeling of people that speak out as being radical, and this kind of flavor of domestic terrorism kind of a thing, like this kind of danger kind of energy. So I wanted to just kind of bring that into the conversation as well, because I think some people that are kind of more polite or something like that, kind of on the surface without diving any deeper, look at some of these things and think that it's like radicalized, or that it's kind of, when you start talking about, armed defense and all of this kind of thing, they haven't done that deeper work, and they think that this is, it kind of falls into some of those things, and so it kind of triggers that fear-based response, and it kind of groups in with people that are a bit unhinged. For the more kind of, I don't know how you'd kind of, what bucket you'd put them into, but they kind of, put those people in a bucket of like, yeah. So I wanted to bring those couple of things into the conversation, if that's okay.
Brandon, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, real quick. That's why I make my main point about morality, because I don't see how you can miscrew that as far as any kind of extremism, anything that's evil. You know, me personally, my main message is about morality from an objective standpoint. So I don't understand how anyone could miscrew that. And if you do, then you are in far more worse, hell, mental, hell framework than we can ever, hell imagine. And then two, you just have to lose all of that fear, because even if you were doing everything correctly and, hell, let's say someone isn't even doing hella great work and someone is totally, in hell asleep, there's always the possibility that something can happen. Something can, hell, get misconstrued, or something can be, someone can be, uh, he'll get hell involved with whatever you have going on and fuck up your shit. So it doesn't matter what you like are doing. You can always have, those have negative things be hell associated, with you, and that's just something you have to deal with, and you just have to you literally have to let go of all of that shit. It's like when Morpheus, he told them, like in the Matrix, shed the fear. You literally have to just say fuck all of that shit and just let it all fucking go, because what's more hell severe, being enslaved or being associated with someone, who's labeled a domestic terrorist? Now, yeah, one may have, like more, serious consequences, like, you know, sadly, how rapidly, hell approaching. Because if you are hell labeled that domestic terrorism, yeah, there could be, speedy hell consequences. But I still don't want to be enslaved, and I don't want humanity to be hell enslaved, because slavery is always morally wrong. So I will always, do hell what I can to fight hell against that. And if that means I have to be, associated with a certain group, then hell, whatever. Fuck the bullshit. Hell, for I don't fear that shit, because at the end of the day, the truth and morality outweighs whatever someone says or associates, help me with, and that's just how, you know, how I would deal, with those things. But again, you really have to share the fear, because I know, because I was in those fear-based, how mindsets, because I was a prepper, how beforehand. And I always thought, oh, if I put myself online, how the government's gonna come after me. Dude, the government ain't coming after you just because how you put shit online. Or it hold on, let me take it back. In these where I'm at now, I do know in certain spots of Europe, there have been people who have said stuff online, and the government has knocked on their door. But again, you have to kind of know where you're at, and just use common sense, but don't fall into the fear, because that's the worst thing that you can do. And don't self censor yourself either, because that's the second worst thing how you can do. I take the Apache approach. If you stand in truth and you speak your voice, you have the most powerfulest ally to aid you in the universe, and it is the power of the truth. And I think if you stand in that, I think you'll be good to a certain degree. It's only a matter of time before sadly this evil is gonna come knocking on all of our doors. But until that happens, then we're going to continue to use our voices and do what's morally right.
Yeah, you can speak truth, but if authority don't give a shit about your truth and they just want to stomp your ass, then they're going to stomp your ass. So that can always happen, but yeah, don't let it hold you back from just speaking these eternal truths, because you can be labeled as someone who's anti-government. So if you're against the government, you're anti-government, you're anti-authority, and then people working in those areas can view you as a threat, because you're a threat to their system, their power, and then they can label you a terrorist, a domestic terrorist, a violent extremist, because you're anti-government, even if you haven't done anything physical. And then they can create laws to justify kidnapping you, putting you in prison. This has happened in more communist countries, but everywhere in the world is heading towards more of that authoritarianism. You got Australia, you got the UK, who's big in that now. You post things online and they go arrest you and shit. It's pretty wild over there. So you gotta be aware, like Brendan said, have like a situational awareness for the relative degree of freedom that your area of living actually has. So in our more liberty-minded Americans, they have more relative degrees of freedom relative to anywhere else in the world. Then you have other Western nations who are less than that, like Canada, I guess Mexico and the UK and some of Europe and Australia and New Zealand. But like Australia and New Zealand, the Anglo-Commonwealths from the British Crown, those places are ramping up in authoritarianism. You got Britain and Australia and New Zealand over the last 20 years, Canada as well. So it's not looking good for the English-speaking parts of the world, other than the US, which even that is also amping up as well, the authoritarianism, but it still remains at the forefront of greatest relative degrees of freedom overall, when you look at it as like a summation of on a point-by-point basis. It still has the most relative to anywhere else. But they're still not, if you're talking about truth and morality, they're not really going after you anywhere in the Western world if you're just talking about these as concepts. Now maybe if you talk about a particular person in government, then they'll be like, oh, because we got those laws in Canada now too, I think, like the UK, and they'll come after you and for discriminating against the government, because now they're a protected class where you can't say anything bad against them. You can't make jokes, you can't do satire, you can't make fun of them. Can't make fun of them. No, can't do that, because you're a criminal. So that's how bad things are degenerating. And if anyone thinks they're going to get better, why would you think they're going to get better? They're just going to get worse. Why? What's going to make them not make things worse? There's no pushback. There's no consequences. They can just keep doing it. when inflation hits, I was thinking of this the other day. Inflation hits and everyone knows the things are going to start costing more. What does the government do first? They increase their own salaries. That's what they did years ago. Like, we're getting ourselves a pay raise before everyone else has to deal with the inflation. We're gonna get ahead of that inflation. We're just gonna increase our salaries by 30%. Well, no one else can fucking do that. Anyways, these are parasites. They don't view themselves as parasites, but they are. Yeah. So there's always risks, but you got to be aware. Like, try to be more rational and more representative of the truth of what's actually going to happen to you versus the fears of, what's potentially, and focus more on the eternals, the solutions, as opposed to the symptoms, even though those have a place of getting people aware that there's a problem. And if you're aware there's a problem, then you're going to probably want a solution. And that's where the causal realm, this causal dynamics, is where it comes in to really empower you and empower us all to get towards changing things, because the symptoms themselves is just describing the prison and all the new things the prison has that's shitty. It's not getting you out of the prison. So, yeah.
Cool. I'll jump off now, guys. I'll let you guys get back into your flow. I just wanted to bring those into the conversation because, as you stated already, in some of these countries, going and locking up grannies for Facebook posts and things like that, that can spike fear, and especially these events. And then so people think, if they poke their head out, that they're going to be targeted and have a lot of negative events associated with it. And, and kind of, it kind of, that infiltrates into more of the masses, which then affects why we have less, people doing the great work. Because that kind of spreads. So, and then the kind of the labeling and all of that kind of makes it seem like it's like a weird offshoot. And so it's like less appealing to come and get involved as well. So I'll drop off now and thank you guys for, I'll keep watching.
Cool. Have a good one. Have a good rest of your day. You're starting
the fear of punishment.
Yeah.
Yep. The fear of punishment from B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning. It's we punish ourselves because we sense what's going to happen as far as the negative ramifications. It's no different when the king would hang somebody out in the middle of the courtyard and let everybody see it, so people know hey, here's what's going to happen to you if you do the same behavior. It's that way of through her punishment, how it has the everlasting, ramification in our mind. Then, how we know is like, oh, well, I don't want that to be me. And then, how we just fall in line. And, it's something that, and I want to say that possibly every human being has had to go through at some point in their life. It's like, oh man, do I want to go against the grain, or do I want to just, fall in line? And then, how ultimately when you fall in line, you just betray your own self, sadly.
Yeah. There's that saying, I don't remember it exactly, but the rulers like it. The quote along the lines of, "It's better to be feared than loved." I don't remember the exact saying there, but that they rulers want to be liked and they want to be loved, but they prefer people fear them and be obedient and stay in their place than to do things to get people to like them by being better and more moral. So they often choose the fear to keep them in line so that they can preserve their power, because that's what they're ultimately always afraid of, is losing their power, losing their parasitical position. That's what royalty is. It's ain't nothing but parasites there, man. They don't grow food themselves. They don't clean up after themselves.
They don't do
it's all
shit
pampered
themselves.
life. It's all parasites. It's leeching off of others, because we live in most people are in we could call it symbiotic as opposed to parasitic, where we have this collective codependence. We're in codependence. We're not truly independent. I don't make my own computers. I don't make my own food. I don't make my own electricity. I don't do all that. I don't make my own clothes. I don't do all of that. But everyone in different areas can do things, and then we can exchange and we trade, and people buy this and they buy that. And if you make something no one wants, well then, you should probably stop doing it, because it's gonna go nowhere. No one wants it. You're not gonna be like, your ability to engage in this exchange means, which we do through the medium of exchange of money, will be hampered. So you won't be able to get the things you want, because no one's going to want the things that you have to offer. So that's why I think the free market is a natural mechanism, whether there's money or not, whether it's just bartering and you have things and other people have things, and then everyone just like trades or makes IOUs or whatever and says, oh, I owe this person this thing, so you trade me this, and then they'll owe you, or however it works. And then anyways, it gets complicated. Money makes things simpler, but then who makes the money? And then whoever makes the money, well, then they get a lot of power, because they can just make the money, and then who gets that money that they just made? So there's like a lot of bullshit with just the creation of money. We can do better. We can get off of that, but the free market is a good idea, because it's like, are you creating something of value that people, do they value? Is it something that they want? And if not, then if other people are creating things that other people want and you're not, then you're not in that symbiotic codependence where you're contributing to things that people want in their lives to get by or to make their lives better. I forget why I was talking about this, but the parasites. Yeah, so the parasites, they're not engaging in this. Nothing they do is actually, they're not creating anything that anyone wants. Only the idiots think that they want the illusion of order that this form of control creates, which is what I'll be talking about in my next presentation on the law of freedom whenever I end up finishing it. Because you have order and chaos, and there's different perspectives that can apply the same term to the same situation. You can use either term, and for the illusion, the somnambulistic, dreamlike people who live in a false reality, they view government, the control of government is creating order, because that's when you order things, you're exerting control over something. You're going to order your room. Well, you're going to exert control over the placement. You're going to arrange things. That's what order etymologically means, is arrangement. So it's an arrangement, an ordering, an orchestration. You can construct. When you construct things, you're going to order things in a specific way. So there's this ordering. When you're exerting control, you're going to be ordering things in a certain way. But it doesn't mean it's true order. It doesn't mean it's the moral order. It just means that you're exerting control to order things in a certain way, and people think that that's a positive form of order when it's actually a negative form of order. And we're just, I don't even remember how I got onto this. Oh yeah, the parasite. Man, I keep forgetting the fucking parasites. Yeah. So they think that people think that the parasites are contributing things, whether it's the kings or even now it's even worse with the politicians, because they think that they manage society and they keep things running smooth, and this is the order they bring, so they're of benefit to society. But it's not. They are not actually contributing anything that people can't do themselves, left to a voluntary, you could call it free market, where I can offer a service and people can exchange with me, can trade with me for the value that my service provides, or they don't, because my service sucks and no one wants it. But when you have a monopoly on power and you coerce people into threats of greater false claims of ownership, greater acts of immorality beyond the coercion. The whole point of coercion is you're going to do this, or you're going to let me do this, or else I'm going to up it from coercion to theft of your stuff, or to confinement, or to trespass. I'm going to assault you. So it's always upping it from coercion. So you're going to let it happen because they got this number of people and you're alone and there's nobody united with you to fight them. So we all let it happen. That's the way we need this quantity of people to eventually change it. And so this coercion, they're going to say, well, we're offering this service and there's no competition to it because you have no choice but to allow us to steal from you in order to pay for this service. And that's just the way it's going to go. And then you can't have improvements upon the service because in a real free market, if your service sucks and it's shit, someone else can come along and do the same thing as you, but do it better and do it in a way that people appreciate and value. And if they value it, then here's this symbiotic codependence where they're going, and currently it's the medium of exchange of money, which doesn't need to be there, but they're going to trade, or they can barter, and it's like, yes, I like these things. Here's this that I made, or well, here's money. It represents the time that I made something else for someone else who gave me the money, and then, anyways, yeah, we don't have to get into money and the whole bullshit about the aspect of where it comes from, but the point I'm getting at is that there's value being provided. Someone values it, so they're going to exchange. They're going to engage in a trade of some kind because what you're providing is valuable. When it comes to government, these are parasites who engage in immoral acts to coerce you, to force you into accepting their service because there's no alternative. And that's why people in government, it's like they joke around. They're like, I'll never get fired from my job. I'd have to like literally hit someone or something, you know? It's a cushy job where it's like the lowest common denominator goes into government work. And yeah, you're working just for parasites. You might be doing something that has some form of value, but it's not the value that it could be because everyone's being forced into taking that service or that good that you're offering, and there's no competition for it. And if there is, it's an unfair advantage because your service or product is being provided through the theft of other people's resources, which funds it. So there's this, it's not even you're already ahead of the game in terms of, oh, I need resources. I need an exchange to happen for me to continue doing what I'm doing. But in the government work, it could be shit. It doesn't matter. It's going to keep going because it's government and it's funded by the theft of people's money versus if it was a real free market voluntary thing. If it was shit, no one would want it. And then you wouldn't even be doing it anymore because you wouldn't even be getting that symbiotic reciprocal exchange and codependence to be able to survive where, you could continue to get the things that you need to survive. That's why there's this incentive for survival that's valuable in this aspect and something to overcome in like a Star Trek world where anyone could provide the service and they're like, yeah, I'm contributing to humanity. Yeah, but no one wants your shit. Oh, I'm going to keep doing it anyways. To get to that point, we need to be in like a higher consciousness of really understanding, things that are of value and things that are beneficial to people and contributing in that respect, not just doing something because like, oh, I found something that I like to do. Yeah, but it sucks. This is my contribution. We have a long way to go before we get to this aspect where we can just contribute for the betterment of everyone and people who like to grow food or like to do this or like to do that or, maybe we wouldn't be growing food if there was replicators used converting energy into matter. And anyways, I'll stop there. Go ahead, Brandon, if you have anything to say.
So I'm gonna keep it short because my headset just died. Not sure if I gotta get a new one, but man, we are so far, we are so far away from this. Oh man, from this. But yeah, we just gotta keep chipping away. As tasking, as hard as it may be. But it is what it is. And that's why how this is for the strong. the great work. It takes a great individual in order to do that great work. So we have to continue to use our voices to spread this knowledge about truth, morality, and freedom. Because at the end of the day, like I've said countless times, that's what it's all about. Is how can we become more moral? How can we align with the truth more? And how can we get to, hell, this destination of freedom that we all say how we want to get to?
Yeah, I didn't get into the topic. Well, I didn't get into the things that I wanted to talk about specifically as the true acknowledgments of truth of why you should get into the great work. But we'll do that next time. And the next time won't be next Wednesday because that's Christmas Eve, and I'll be very busy making food, and that's the Christmas supper here in my house. But I think New Year's Eve, Brendan, you said you'd be available, so I guess we'll continue it there. And so see you in 2 weeks. And in closing,
out there and do the actual great work. How about trying to get out there and do the actual great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh?
there you go. In the wise words of Mark Passio, get out there, do the great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole. So hopefully you're inspired by that. If not, go through Mark Passio's work, go through this podcast series. It could inspire you. Clicks connect the dots, light a fire, engage that care, and get started somewhere, some way. Learn more, do something to get you to where you need to be to get into the work. So have a good evening, good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Take care. Peace.